Hi, this is Stephen with Fairs Management Interactive, also known as Fairs MI. And this is a private video for the Arizona State Fair for their coordinators that are new to Fairs MI tools. We're going to begin by clicking on the administrative access in the entry portal. And we're going to go ahead and enter our username. And we're going to enter our password. We're going to hit submit. So first we're going to look at the drop-down menu on the right. Now in the drop-down menu we've got it divided up into outdoor areas and buildings. To date, the Arizona State Fair has been concerned mostly with the all grounds area and the comm exhibit building at the bottom of the buildings list. Let's go ahead and click on all grounds. It brings it up. Let's look at the upper left-hand corner for our zoom control. And then on the bottom and the right, we have pan controls. And we can zoom out again. Now let's go ahead and look at our comm exhibit building. We can zoom in on that too if we like. But let's go back to our all grounds. So here's our all grounds. The next tool we're going to look at is our files menu. We look up there and it's the upper right hand corner. We click on it. We've got two different ways of saving our files. We have master plans and we have the personal folders. I'll talk about the personal folders now and the master plans a little later. We've got load and save. Let's go ahead and click on load. I've already put some plans in there for you. They're based on Wandell's plans that were, I think, the latest and greatest of the fairground plans. You'll see I've named the same plan slightly differently, and we'll talk about that in a second. But for now, I'm going to click on the All Grounds 2015 and hit OK. And up pops our layout. Now we can use our zoom control and our pan control to look a little more conveniently at some of the areas. So let's talk about the areas we're looking at. There's two different ways that we can look at these booths. We can either click on the booth. I'm clicking on 1107 right now, just as an example. If we look and click on booth layout in the upper left hand corner, this is where we edit booths. But if you look at the bottom, it'll also tell you your booth number and the booth size. In this case, if we wanted to edit this 1107 booth, one of the things we want to make sure, we want to click on that booth right before we edit it to make sure that's the active one. We're going to go ahead and make it a 60-foot booth instead of 80. We hit OK, and there you can see it shortened it up. So OK edits the actual booth. Now, if we want to make a copy of that booth, it will copy it with the exception of putting in the exhibitor information that's in there. Let me back up just one second, and I'm clicking on 1107 again. Let me show you the other way to look at the booth, and that would be your exhibitor data. And you click on the exhibitor data, and it gives you the company name. Now, later on, we'll look at the sales tab, and you can add other descriptions in there if you like, product descriptions that will also show up in the exhibitor data tab. But let's go back into the booth layout, and we're going to use that new command in the single booth control. So we're going to click on 1107. We're going to make it 1107B. And instead of hitting OK, we're going to go hit new, but we also want to make it smaller. We want to make it a 20 by 40 because we want to put it right next to it. Okay, so we hit new, and you can see it dropped it in, but the colored booths you see are the sales status. So you can see it came up as white and blank, so it doesn't have a exhibitor in there, but it made an easy convenient booth right next to it. Now you'll notice if we try to move this booth around, it won't move. We have to go down to this bottom left-hand area, the single booth move checkbox, and check it. And now it allows us to move. So now we've put it right in there. So this is where we needed to sell another booth space. We diminished the size of one booth and slipped one in. Now, a little bit about the single booth move command. I'm going to uncheck it because one of the things we want to do is when we're editing the exhibitors, it's really good to leave it unchecked so you don't accidentally nudge a booth or move a booth around. It won't prevent you from deleting the booth or editing it, but it'll keep you from accidentally moving it. So there we've got the single booth control to see the sizes of the booths and to edit them. And then we've got the exhibitor data that will give us some exhibitor names. Let me just click on a few of these here, and you'll see they actually blink so you know which ones you've got. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our exhibit building. Now, one of the things I guess to remember here is you want to go ahead and save a layout that you've edited. If you want to save this layout, you go back to the Files menu, and then you go to the personal folder Save. And I recommend that you save a lot of backups incrementally. And if you look at the upper part of the list, I have created a date stamp in front of it. And this will allow you to create a lot of files that stay in order. It allows you to incrementally go back if you've made a mistake. And then what's interesting is in the post-event wrap-up, you can actually get a history of the files, the sales levels at each step of the saving history. So I'm going to hit cancel. I'm not going to save this because we've just kind of messed around with it. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the COM exhibit building. We don't want to save. It's asking us just to remind us. We're going to go to the personal folder load. And we're going to go ahead and click the COMX 2015. We hit that. And there's all your, let's go to exhibitor data, and here's all your exhibit booths and their exhibitors. Now, let's look at something here. In terms of 2017, you've got two choices. You can either work with the same layout and exhibitors as the previous year, and if there's very few changes, then it's easier to go ahead and go back into each one of those few booths and change it. However, if you've got a lot of changes to make, then it's probably easier to start with a blank layout. So let's go ahead and go into our Files menu in the upper right-hand corner, and our Files load, and you'll see that for the All Grounds and for the COMX, I've created a stripped down version of those layouts that have no names in them. And this would be if you were starting from scratch. Like I say, there's a lot of changes to be made in the layout, and it's less confusing to start with everything blank than it is just to edit a few names. So I'm going to click on COMX 2015 no names. Hit OK. You can see now we've got the same layout. Now, let's go ahead and look at editing a little bit. We're going to zoom up on this left-hand side of the layout. Let's say we've got to make another 20 by 20 layout here, just similar to what we've got on the other corners. And so what we do is go into our booth layout tab. We would click on some of these booths, 204, and hit delete. Click on 154, delete, and 203B, delete. And the reason why I left 153B as the remaining booth to make a 20 by 20 out of is that the booths, when you resize them, resize from the upper left-hand corner down to the lower right. So it's always more convenient to resize with the upper left-hand booth in a group. So we click this, and we go over to the length and width and we change it to a 20 by 20. We're going to go ahead and leave the number the same, and we hit OK. Now, we may want to cross aisle here, so we would click the 155 and delete, and the 205 delete, and now we've got a cross aisle for this 20 by 20. Let's go on now to selling booth space with the exhibitors. So we want to always click on the booth to make sure that's the active one. You'll see this little red pencil in the upper right hand corner of the booth, and this is kind of for your convenience, because as you go through your editing sessions, it lets you know which booths you've changed. So you can go back through, and if you have a task list of changes to make, it makes it very easy to spot which booths have been changed. And of course, by process of elimination, you'll be able to identify booths that were on your list that maybe you have not changed yet. So we've clicked on that booth, and we're going to click on Sales Planner. We're going to go to the company name, and we're going to enter an exhibitor. We're going to say that this exhibitor is selling soft drinks and t-shirt giveaways. Now, we also want to go ahead and give it a status, and this later on lets your sales managers and yourself be able to, at a glance, see which booths are sold, which booths are sold and paid in full, which areas have maybe not been sold but you're reserving them. And there's also, you can also do future expansion booth areas that you want to identify as not going to be part of the layout unless you absolutely need them. So let's go ahead and make this sold, paid in full, and we click on it, and we hit OK, and there it is. It's done. Now we go ahead back into our Files menu. After we've done our session, we're going to do a personal folder save. And I'm going to go ahead and save this just as a test save, just so you can see. So I type in, I'm just going to type in X. I'm sorry. What I'm going to do first is type in the timestamp. So I type in 2017, and then 07 and 16. Usually I put an underscore in. The program won't recognize spaces. So if you type in a space, it'll just close that space between them. And I'm just going to do test layout. Now, one of the things I've forgotten to tell you is I think what you want to do in that name is to say what area that you're saving to. So when you look at your files, you know that this belongs to, and I'm typing in now, ComX. And I hit OK. And so really, when we're beginning, these are the three areas that you really want to look at, and pretty much leave the rest of them alone. You're going to look at your booth layout for editing. Now, leave the booth pod control alone until you're ready to start laying out entire buildings, because the booth pod control lays out groupings of booths and automatically numbers them. So you always want to stay with the single booth control, and you want to make sure that you use the delete at the bottom. If you accidentally hit the delete at the top one, the booth pod control, it'll delete your whole group of booths. This is another important reason as a beginner that you want to save as many times as you can. You can name the files if you're saving them 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times in one day, A, B, C, D at the end, but it's really important because you're gonna appreciate it eventually. So that's one thing, is the booth layout with the single booth control. The next thing is your exhibitor data that identifies your booths in terms of making sure that they're listing the right exhibitor. The next thing is your sales planner, and that's to actually sell the booth. And the next thing is the files for saving. Now, in the next lesson, we'll talk about master plan in more depth, but typically what happens is that you want to take the greatest best file you've got in your personal folder, and you'll save it to a master plan. This gives you, number one, two sets of backups, but number two, this master plan is where the exhibitor list that you can print out is or check on is generated from. None of your personal folders, even though they contain exhibitor placements, do not generate your master exhibitor list with names and such. There's some other uses for the master plan we can go into, but that's up here at the top. The personal folder load and save is pretty much where you stay now, and that pretty much gets it for your first lesson. We're going to go over it Monday, but I thought I'd let you have this. One of the other very important parts of this is that when you close a session with your browser, don't close down the browser window. Go ahead and click this log out button. If you don't do that enough times, you may see an error come up on your screen that says CNC error. Don't get excited. It's not a big deal. Give me a call and I can take the CNC error off, and I'll teach you how to do it in just a few seconds. Essentially, there's a program in here because it's a lot of complex math, a lot of complex information going back and forth, the sizes and the exhibitors, and we have this traffic cop in our program that makes sure that everything is straight and lined up when we close it out. And so the logout button does that. It kind of keeps the files clean. If you go ahead and just close down your browser, you could do it 5-10 times and you never see anything, but sooner or later the information is going to get mixed up enough that it's going to say, hey, what happened? And typically you won't lose any information. It's just giving you a warning that we need to straighten the information out. I know that's way too much on the topic of hitting that logout button, but it's a good practice. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the logout button, and it brings me right back to the login screen. So there you go. Apologies, this is not a finished presentation like we have online, but I think it'll give you a good start before we have our phone call on Monday. Thanks so much.